Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. And by way of introduction of our first subject tonight, there's this.
Playing Major League Baseball is a lot of fun, and what an opportunity. I'm Ron Fairley, and I've been fortunate to be part of this dream game since 1958. With dedication, it may be within reach of you talented young people watching this game, too. A career in baseball holds many fascinations, and this includes the opportunity to set yourself up for a very satisfying life once your playing days end. It takes perseverance and hard work, but it's well worth it for a life in baseball. Don't you agree?
Well, that was Ron Fairley, who died recently at the age of 81, and he was a pretty decent baseball player, but he did have a lot of hard work and perseverance. He was an outfielder first baseman out of USC, played for the Dodgers for about 10 years. He was on 3 World Championship teams, the 59 team that beat the White Sox, sorry Sid, 63 team that beat the Yankees, sorry Sid, and the 65 team that beat the Twins. With Koufax on the mound, and he talked about how the ball made a special sound when it left Sandy Koufax's hand that it never made with anybody else. The thing about Ron Fairley was he was a really nice guy. I met him a bunch of times after he was traded to the Expos when I was working at Wrigley Field, and he was always telling stories, and he was just a generally all-around good guy. He became a broadcaster for the Mariners and for a little while for the Tigers, and he was just the best when it came to telling stories. Here he is getting the Bob Feller Award for working with veterans. Bob Feller was a good storyteller too, by the way.
Ladies and gentlemen, this time we would like to salute former Dodger Ron Fairley for his exemplary efforts in support of our servicemen and women. Ron is a finalist for the 2016 Bob Feller Act of Valor Award.
The foundation, through the unique intersection of baseball and the U.S. Navy, recognizes and honors those who support our servicemen and women with the Bob Feller Act of Valor Award. The foundation uses the Bob Feller story, Hall of Fame achievement on the baseball diamond, and service to his country as the framework of our mission. We salute and honor all whose actions, values, and dedication to our servicemen and women represents the dignity and integrity displayed by Feller himself.
In fact, 16 MLB players have been named finalists for the 2016 award. Ron, a member of Dodger championship teams in 1959, 1963, and 1965, spent 48 years in professional baseball as a player and broadcaster. Today, he spends much of his time helping veterans. He sits on the board of Rebuilding America's Warriors, or RAW. RAW, which was founded in 2007, makes it possible for military servicemen and women who've been injured while on duty to receive reconstructive surgery at no cost to them.
Well, as I said, Ron Fairley told a lot of stories. Some of his best stories were about Sandy Koufax and Mickey Mantle. He told one about Mantle coming off the field after striking out against Koufax in the World Series, and he came over to Ron Fairley as he was coming off the field, and he said, "Hey, Ron, tell that guy to lighten up. He's making me look bad." Well, that was Mickey late in his career, but he tells a story about Mickey at the height of his career, too. This was at the old Griffith Park in Washington, D.C., where the Senators played.
This is the old Washington ballpark. It was 400 feet down the left field line, and it was 4 big numbers, 4 something out here in center field. And the Yankees one time had an argument. The guys were sitting in the bullpen out there and down the line. And the argument was, do you think anybody could hit the ball that could hit the scoreboard? And the consensus was, no. About 10 days later, Mantle hit one over. That's the 565 that Mickey hit. But everybody, the consensus was, no, nobody's going to be able to hit a ball that's going to hit the scoreboard up here at all. And the Mick launched one through the uprights and he hit it over.
3 points for that,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, I don't know how many runs it counted, but he hit it over. Red Patterson, who eventually became the director of public relations for the Dodgers, he's the one that went out there and marked it off, because he went out there and there was some kids that were out there beyond the fence, and they said, "Did you see where the ball landed?" And the kid said, "Yeah, it landed right here." So he just marched it back to where the ball was. That's how they figured the 565.
Ron Fairley, a good guy. Well, we're going to move on now to Gert Boyle, who died recently at the age of 95. She was one tough mother. She was the leader of Columbia Sportswear and became one of Oregon's most important business people and philanthropists. Her family fled Nazi Germany right before the war and moved to Portland, where her father started Columbia Sportswear. It was actually a hat company when it started out. Her father died in 1964. Her husband took over the business and diversified it into sportswear, and when he died in 1970, she took over the business and made it a hugely successful operation, which among other things introduced Gore-Tex parkas. She didn't always get along with the city of Portland, but here is KGW Channel 8 Portland News to talk about Gert Boyle.
In the face of adversity, Gert Boyle persevered. At age 13, her family fled Nazi Germany and moved to Portland, Oregon, where her dad founded what was then called Columbia Hat Company in 1938. When her father died, her husband Neil took over. But 6 years later, he died unexpectedly of a heart attack, leaving Gert in charge in 1970.
When she took over, she was a woman CEO in a business where there weren't many women CEOs, a sports apparel business, and she was discriminated against. And there was this famous incident when she picked up her phone and the fellow on the other end said, "I want to speak to the CEO." And she said, "Speaking?" And he said, "But you're a woman." And she said, "I noticed that when I got up this morning."
Her quick wit is something Carrie Timchuk remembers fondly. He helped write her autobiography and formed a lasting friendship.
It's Gert's story, One Tough Mother, her autobiography, and how she success in life, business, and apple pies.
Carrie says Gert wasn't much of a cook, but she was every bit as tough as the ad campaign would lead you to believe.
Only one is the toughest mother of them all.
After running Columbia Sportswear for a year, things weren't going well, and she was told to sell it. But when the buyer tried to nickel and dime her at the last minute, she pulled the deal.
And Gert got her dander up, and she said, "There's the door." And she figured out that she was going to make about $1,500 from the sale. And she said, "I'd rather run it into the ground myself."
So I better get to work before
You're damn right, you better work.
Gert and her son Tim turned Columbia into a billion-dollar company.
I had it up to here, and I fired everybody.
But she wasn't just tough in the boardroom. She proved to be tough at home, too.
She was a true Oregon icon, the patron saint of Oregon.
Philanthropist is another word many would say captures her as well. She donated the royalties from her autobiography to Special Olympics and CASA, an organization that helps abused and neglected children. She also gave $100 million to the Night Cancer Institute at OHSU. We spoke with Brian Drucker, the director of the institute, about the donation then. Today, he says he still remembers her kindness, directness, and wicked sense of humor. In his statement, he pledged to honor her generosity and legacy, and said when Gert gave her $100 million gift during the Night Cancer Challenge, she said that what she did was not any more remarkable than what others did, with lemonade stands or bake sales. She gave what she could. OHSU also released a statement calling her an Oregon icon and a national treasure. It reads in part, "Gert Boyle forever will be one of the driving forces behind our efforts to end cancer as we know it. Oregon has lost one of its most inspiring and extraordinary citizens." And who better to share one of her inspiring mantras than the woman herself?
It's life, and you can't live in the past. Yesterday is never going to come around again. So you better enjoy today. And if you did do it right today, you better do better tomorrow.
And that's how she lived life.
We're going to move on now to Ernest Gaines, who died recently at the age of 86. Ernest Gaines was a novelist whose novels often got made into made-for-television movies, and most famous and most successful of which was the Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, a 1974 made-for-TV movie that was extremely popular, artistically acclaimed, and garnered a well-earned Emmy for Cicely Tyson, who played a 110-year-old black slave, reminiscing about her life as a slave before the Civil War up until the Civil Rights Movement. Here's a little bit of Cicely Tyson from the Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman.
Jimmy. You see, these folks round here ain't ready for nothing like that yet.
That's our job.
Talk to 'em, Jimmy. Talk to the young ones.
We don't have that kind of time, Miss Jane.
What else you got, Jim? I've been carrying a scar on my back ever since I was a slave.
That's precisely why we need you. Your mere presence with us will bring forth the...
Jim, understand? Believe it or not, I was once young myself.
That girl is going to drink from the fountain tomorrow.
Well, God moves in a mysterious way. He has wonders to perform. I wait for him to give me the sign, Jimmy. And he's right most times. I wait on him.
Well, Ernest Gaines was from southern Louisiana. He was born in Oscar. He was educated on the West Coast at San Francisco State and then at Stanford because he did not have educational opportunities in southern Louisiana. But he moved back there to Point Coupé, and that's the setting for many of his stories. His work has been translated into 14 different languages. He made it to the top of Oprah's book club in 1997 for his novel A Lesson Before Dying, for which he was nominated for the Pulitzer Prize. He did win the National Book Critics Circle Award that year, and he was the scholar in residence at University of Louisiana Lafayette, where there's an academic center named for him. Here's WAFB Baton Rouge on the death of Ernest Gaines.
Thank you, Jay. A lot of heavy hearts tonight as many of you come to the terms of the heartbreaking loss of one of the greatest literary minds in the South. Scotty Hunter looks back at the life and legacy of Mr. Ernest Gaines.
Literary icon Dr. Ernest J. Gaines passed away peacefully in his home early Tuesday of natural causes, but the immense legacy he leaves behind is nothing short of inspiring.
I read books and read books and read books, and when I didn't find me or my own people in those books, it was then that I tried to write.
And write he did. His highly regarded literary works, from A Lesson Before Dying to the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman, earned him national recognition and a place in the hearts and minds of readers across the globe. But it was his home here in Point Coupé Parish and all her beauty that truly served as his muse.
On 6 acres of land, and I think they are the most beautiful 6 acres of land in the world.
Growing up in the old slave quarters of River Lake Plantation, he later lived on the same property he once worked. He left that land only once in his life at a time when the place he so dearly loved did not quite have the same fondness for him.
I could not go to a junior high school or high school or the library in Point Coupé Parish. I could not go to. There was nothing there for blacks.
From national awards to having his 9 novels and short stories translated into 14 different languages, he's truly done it all, including having his work featured atop Oprah Winfrey's book club in 1997. Gaines was formerly educated at Stanford University and lived in California for a time before returning home and getting involved with the creative writing program at the University of Louisiana Lafayette. It's where he spent roughly 20 years, eventually serving as the writer in residence there. The Gaines Center named in his honor on the school's campus, mourning like so many at this time, saying he will be dearly missed.
You write about where the soul is.
While he may no longer be with us, his place in the world of literature and in the lives of those who knew him will live on for generations to come. Scotty Hunter, WAFB 9 News.
I have to tell you, we did Maya Angelou's obit cast a couple of years back, and we recently did Toni Morrison's. Ernest Gaines doesn't have the reputation that either of them does, but he lived a harder life, and in many ways he was much more of a breath of fresh air personality-wise than either of them. Ernest Gaines, underrated. Well, we're going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. We're going to close tonight with a brief mention of Bernard Slade, who died recently at the age of 89. He was a playwright. He wrote Same Time Next Year. Saw that play on Broadway, didn't like it. Saw the movie with Alan Alda and Ellen Burstyn, neither of whom I liked very much, didn't like it there either. But it is pretty popular. He created The Flying Nun with Sally Field. That too is an acquired taste, but he also created the Partridge Family. And we talked about the Partridge Family, the typical late baby boomer family show of the early 70s. We talked about it when we did David Cassidy, and a little bit when we did Dave Madden. It was loosely based on the singing family the Cowsills, and for a little while they wanted the Cowsills to actually star in the program. But for one reason or another, that didn't work out, so they put together a make-believe family, and they got some awfully talented people, including Shirley Jones to be the mother and David Cassidy to be the lead singer. We also got Susan Day, who's pretty and was a good actress, and Danny Bonaducci, who's an all-around character. As a final tribute to Bernard Slade, we're going to play the theme song to the Partridge Family, and we've played it before, but this time we're going to play the original version of the first season, which we haven't played before. The version you probably know is Come On Get Happy, but the first season's version was known as When We're Singin'. So as a final tribute to Bernard Slade, here is When We're Singin' with the lead singer David Cassidy and a little backing by the Wrecking Crew.
Come on now and meet everybody and hear us singing. There's nothing better than being together when we're singing. 5 of us and Mom working all day. We knew we could help her if our music would pay. Daddy got Reuben to sell our song, and it really came together. together when Mom sang along.